Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hearth. Um, Kate, Kristin, and I are now being joined by Alison Greene-Barton. Thank you so much for joining us and becoming part of our regular crew. It's such a pleasure to have you already.
And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And so and this is going to be a conversation that's coming from Anna Chitty's talk. Last month, we spoke about blueprint. And this next conversation after blueprint will be a conversation about how do we access blueprint? How do we access health that is innately ours? Um, it's, all of us here, it's something that is innate, it's something that's natural, it's something that supports us even when we have difficult experiences, even when we have wounding. This natural health is always operating underneath. But how do we intentionally um, create some kind of update to how we use that health when we had difficult experiences and traumatic experiences, and really update to a more intentional life that we have today? So that's what we'll be discussing today. And I wonder if there's someone who would like to start.
Well, thanks, Eileen. It's wonderful to have somebody orient us to I felt myself just kind of going either up or downstairs. I don't know. It just felt step, step, step. So yeah, I'm willing to jump in, and I feel like I was so inspired by Anna's talk around how she's developed her work and all the influences that have come in, and our knowing that there's an innate blueprint that's in our system, it's in our body, and but not many of us until we realize, oh, this is the blueprint. How do I access it? And actually, a lot of people, when you start talking about it, they're like, wait a second, like, what is this blueprint thing that you keep talking about? And how do we access it? And I remember the first time I asked that question, it was John Chitty was still alive. And John and I were having a conversation, and I think Anna must have overheard. So then she appears in the screen, and it's really was quite easy to access the blueprint. It's like going for a walk in nature, being able to access things that bring us a sense of connection to safety or security or even pleasure, things that enliven us or help us feel supported or quieter or more joyful. I don't know. There are a lot of little ways to access this thing we call the health in our system or the blueprint. Anybody else have a story?
I could jump in. Unfortunately, I didn't see Anna's interview about the blueprint, but I look forward to watching that and listening to it. But one of the ways that I access the blueprint when I'm up against the repetitive pattern of an imprint is first I check in with myself. Am I kind of running away from this? Am I avoiding it, distracting myself? Am I in emotional reaction to it? And then when I notice that, I make a choice to, instead of avoiding it, protecting myself from it, running away from it, I let myself soften into it. Because I find when I'm in reaction to the imprint, I'm bracing, I'm tightening up. And then somatically, if I recognize that, I orient myself to present age, present time, remind myself that this is a memory coming up and it's just information and I can be with it, I can accept it. And then I let myself very gently soften into it, even if it's only a little trickle of energy as I move through whatever that imprint is. I let myself focus on where the energy is moving rather than where it's stuck or where it's not moving. And then eventually that builds potency and starts to move in like a bigger movement. And I start to feel relief from it. And sometimes the memory that's in the imprint comes up and I can see what it is and realize, oh, this is what is stuck there. I really try and identify where it is in my body. Sometimes I'll write it down on a piece of paper so I'm not holding it, but I'm letting it release onto a piece of paper. And then as it builds potency and I'm letting this go, I start to also feel other feelings coming in through softening rather than tightening. And that's when I start to feel the pleasure and the expansion, where I'm not stuck in that little teeny perspective, but I'm starting to kind of look up and look around. And that's when I can feel myself starting to connect with and access the blueprint. But at first, to get there, it's a little uncomfortable. And then as I soften into it and not run away from it, I start to open to a new experience with it.
Thanks, Allison.
Yeah, that felt good.
Yeah, I feel like I just went on a little trip with you.
Yeah.
I can share next. I feel like one of the biggest things that lands for me when we talk about blueprint and imprint, and when I originally met Anna was through Body into Being when she taught with Ray. And I think one of the things that really landed for me in their teaching was that blueprint was actually within every imprint that we experience. And it's how we responded to the circumstances given what was available to us. And it turns into an imprint when it gets stuck in that mode and such that we can't orient to the present moment as much. And so there's something about when that really landed for me, I could really start to see the health or the blueprint in my reactions when I could orient back to, oh, that's how I navigated such and such in my history. And which brought in a lot more acceptance for me of what was happening, both for myself as well as others with whom I was interacting. And I know in the interview, I know you want to talk about this a little bit too, Eileen, but in the interview, that the idea of acceptance, or I also think both acceptance and allowance are a big part of what shifts things for me. Like, can I, one, allow myself to have my reaction or my response to something? And then how do I come into relationship with it in such a way that I can accept, oh, wow, this is what either I needed to have done back then, or even accepting what someone else might be needing to do right now. And then how, once I can do that, how do I come into relationship with that? With compassion or with contact or just openness, maybe, or curiosity. And I think that those are things that open me up to more blueprint and more health in both seeing it in myself or in the field around or in the relationship of the circumstances or people.
Yeah, thanks, Kristin.
Yeah.
I was really appreciating, Allison, you talking about you really took us through a journey of really practical steps to take to access Blueprint. And then I love what you said about acceptance, Kristin, as a way to come into a relationship with Blueprint. And what came alive for me just now as I was listening to both of you is that in having those maps, one of the things that I do is a body-centered practice and being present in the moment in my body, so I can even know where I am, so I can use that map. So really, like, even underneath what the two of you are talking is beginning to really create this connection with body. And then what is my experience? What is my direct experience in this moment? And in that, then, everything that you said, Alison, then just becomes a map that we can orient to first, like, well, where am I in this map? Or to even bring in acceptance of, like, to begin by orienting. So I'm enjoying both the possibility of feeling, where am I? What is my experience? Having the intention of, I want to connect with Blueprint, and then to use these different tools to connect with that health. That, in the beginning for me, it was more intellectual trust. There were teachers I trusted. And so intellectually, I believe my teacher that there was this thing called innate health, but then actually how to verify that through my own experience.
Well, I think what kind of comes alive for me listening to all of you, also to use your word, Eileen, what comes alive is sensory awareness. Like you talk about it as a body-centered practice, Eileen, and I heard you say, Alison, that you can pause and just be curious about your experience. Like this overwhelming thing is a memory. Can you be curious about it and soften? I mean, that's a choice. I mean, most of us do brace against challenge, overwhelming things, and really bringing your awareness, your consciousness to that moment. Like, what is this? That's one of my favorite questions. What is this? The Zen cone. And I tell my students, it's like a boa constrictor, you holding it, or is it holding you? You have to begin to feel mastery over the moment, and with your curiosity, like, what is this thing? Why am I being drawn into it? What is the spark that, if I can pause and back up and just be curious? So I feel like accessing the blueprint, and I love what you said, Kristin, too, like the blueprint and the imprint are connected. So, and the imprint is actually blueprint, only it's how we shaped ourselves in response to this overwhelming thing. And for pre-perinatal work, it's not in our cognitive memory, it's in our body. And we can just be curious about it when we feel that sensory place. And I also just want to name that sometimes it takes another person. I think you mentioned it, Alison. But it takes another sometime who knows, who can help you be curious about, what is this thing that's got me? And together, that presence really makes a difference. Presence and curiosity.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. I'm really appreciating what you're saying about curiosity, Kate. Sometimes I also describe that as having a positive attitude towards something. Like if I have a positive attitude, my energy field tends to open. Whereas if I have a negative attitude towards what I'm looking at, that what I'm curious about, my energy field starts to close. And so that's another way that I can be with in curiosity about the imprint, is also checking into what is my attitude right now towards this. Am I self-defeating here in the moment and identifying with the imprint and spinning with it? Or could I open to identify or be curious about the blueprint as a way to look at the imprint rather than become the imprint and be lost in it? So I love that attitude of curiosity, and then also allowing yourself to be positive. And again, for me, positive is, it means there's the potential of another possibility. Whereas when I'm negative about something, I tend to recycle whatever I'm experiencing and feel stuck.
I'm really enjoying, Allison, when you say positivity, the way I relate to it is, for me, what always brings me to that positive orientation, to that active posture, is the knowledge from my own experience that every challenge has possibility, every challenge has a lesson, every challenge is something that I can engage with curiosity. And one of the things I often talk about with my clients is that when we state intentions, we don't even have to know how we're going to get there. That we're stating an intention, we're setting a direction toward health, and that even our intentions are a message from our health. So this blueprint, that this innate health in us, it speaks to us through intentions. And we don't have to know how we're going to get there. It kind of opens up a space for that health to come into and start to manifest. And so I really liked what you said about just having that orientation toward positivity. And one of my teachers used to help us with it was kind of like a discipline of, when you see your mind going in a particular direction, to say, I'm not going into that neighborhood. And then to just like, there is a little bit of an active choice that I make to orient to my intentions, to orient to what is the opportunity here. And I also think it is important to have another person there, because sometimes it's really hard for us to begin to do that on our own, that it really helps to have accurate reflection from another human being.
I think you're speaking to two things there also. I mean, as well as many other things, but there's something of safety that was spoken earlier, and curiosity, and that we do need to have some discernment of what doorway can we open, or do we have the support to open? And that there is blueprint in sometimes the hesitation, or in sometimes the resistance to explore something in more depth. And how do we recognize that as well? It was, as I was listening to the three of you, it was reminding me also of, I think Anna said in this interview, talked about the Advent calendar, and how like the challenges that you're speaking to, Eileen, are like potential doors that we can open. And if we bring curiosity of like, what is in this challenge? What is in this imprint, or however we orient to it? And do we want to be behind? Is there curiosity, openness that you're speaking to, Alison, to do that? And how do we invite that in? And sometimes there's some that I know for myself, I'll say, I want to keep shut for a little bit, or I might peek at it for a little moment and then just be like, okay, that's enough for right now, before I want to open it a little bit wider or have the support in another person or a field around me to be able to look at it in more depth. Yeah, so.
Well, when I listened to that interview with Anna and also just listening to you now, I'm having the memory of being there listening to the Advent calendar with all the doorways. But behind that, she said, is this really amazing thing that's part of our human experience. And everybody has it. And it's always there. So I really just got the sense of this magnificent, glowing, energetic quality of us behind all these doorways. But it's like if you just lifted it off, and then we would have this access to this beautiful, matrix that's always there. And so I'm like, oh, that's exciting to think about. And most of the Advent calendars I know are these paper things with doorways that open up.
You know what, you're reminding me of that, I don't know, that show back when we were growing up, where it would start to, like, you could see a picture behind the picture. It would, it would start to move, and can you guess or can you see what's behind? Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember that show.
I don't remember either.
It was some game show or something, but can we see what's behind through all those little doorways?
I think that one of the nice things that Anna says about it is that we're not always in the blueprint. It would be very boring if we lived in the blueprint all the time. And I feel like these painful places become like works of art on layerable art. Once you drain the charge out of it, you can have access to something that you learn there. And I remember, Eileen, when you and I were teaching together once, you named it. You said our adaptation experiences are, I don't know, gifts or something for us in the present. And I don't remember all the words you said. Maybe you can remember.
Well, what I always say is that there's a way that our adaptive behaviors use our gifts.
Yes.
To help us, when we look at what was the adaptive behavior we came up with, it usually contains our gift.
And we're all different in our gifts. Thank goodness.
I mean, right now, as each of us is talking about our experience here, I can really feel myself co-regulating with each of you, and I could feel my energy start to expand in a sense of heightening. So I feel like just by having this conversation and connecting with each of you with the intention to, explore how to access this, I feel like I'm opening to it, like with you and through you and accessing it right now. And I was just curious if each of you were feeling that as well right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thanks for naming that.
And we hope by those out there listening, you'll feel the same and actually come and have a conversation with us at the Hearth in May.
Thank you.